Boker Tov. Today's daf yomi is Makkos daf Dalet. This is the daf yomi for Shabbos Erev Pesach, being recorded on Erev Shabbos, and we're going to start on the bottom of Gimel Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. And today's daf is dedicated for a Shmir for the Chayalim, Matzah for the Shvuyim, and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. Says the Gemara, Amar Yehuda Marav, Shloshes Lundim Mayim Shenafo Tochan Kortiv Shal Yayin. So let's say we have, in order for mikvah to be kosher, today's daf starts with teaching that Rabbi Yehuda Marav shares, which Rav Kahana is going to challenge. So that's the context, because we're discussing those types of traditions, those teachings in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Marav. And this one happens to be about a mikvah. So if a mikvah, before it gets to 40 sa, before it gets to the kosher size of a mikvah, has 3 lug in an amount of drawn water, mayim she'uvim, then it's going to be disqualified. But once it gets to our 40 lugin, then the 3 lugin do not disqualify it. But so let's say you have 3 lugin of water that was drawn water, therefore it would disqualify a mikvah. Shendafo a tochan kortav, but a small amount of shalyayin, a small amount of wine fell into this lugin of water, and as a result of it, marayin kamari yayin. So now it looks like wine, doesn't look like water anymore. And nafu a mikvah, and it fell into a mikvah or pasul. It has not disqualified the mikvah. What's the reason? Because Rav says that mayim she'uvim, that drawn water, only disqualifies the mikvah if it has the appearance of water, but water that has the appearance of wine is going to be judged like wine and not disqualify the mikvah. So Ma'askefar Rav Kahana challenges Rav Yehuda Marav's teaching. He says, how is this different than water which is dyed? If, let's say, a person has ink on his hands and sticks it into water, and then that water falls into the mikvah, we say that, that does disqualify the mikvah. It's not Rabbi Yossi Omer made seva post on us a mikvah b'shloshas lugin, that dyed water, water that is appearance of, maybe it looks like wine, but it's not wine, will disqualify the mikvah with 3 lugin. So why are you drawing this distinction? Asks Rav Kahana to Rabbi Yehuda. So Amrei Rava says to Rav Kahana, Asam mayim ditziva mikri, chamra meziga mikri. There it's called water that is dyed, but here it's called wine that is diluted. So it depends what it's called. If it's called water that it's dyed, it's going to disqualify the mikvah. But if it's called wine, then it's diluted wine, it's going to be kosher. Tani Rabbi Chia, so the Gemara challenges this, but Rabbi Chia, when he taught over a brisa, he said 3 lugin of drawn water that fall into the court of yayin and it falls into the mikvah, or redo as a mikvah, it's no longer kosher. So basically, Rabbi Chia said that in this case, where you have the wine that falls into the mikvah, it's going to disqualify the mikvah. So why is Rabbi Yehuda saying in the name of Rav it's kosher when there's a brayse that says it's not kosher? I'm a Rav kasha, so it's not a difficulty. So there's a dispute about this amongst the Tanaim. Rav's position is said, Rav Yochanan ben Nuri. Rav Yochanan ben Nuri says we go after the appearance of the wine. Rashi says the asal basar chazusa. It says we go after the appearance, and since it's wine and doesn't look like water, it's not going to disqualify. And whereas the position of Rabbi Chia, his brayse is like the Rabbanon, who say that we follow after the shear and not after the appearance. So since it has a shear of 3 lugin of water, it's going to disqualify the mikvah. The Tanan, Shloshes lugin mayim, as we learned to Mesechas Mikvos, that there's a dispute between Rabbi Yochanan Nuri and the Rabbanon, because we say Shloshes lugin mayim. Let's say you have 3 lugin of water, plus our kortav. If it's not, doesn't have the shear of a kortav, shenafal tochan kortav yayin, and a kortav of wine fell in, umarayin kamara yayin, and now it looks like wine, b'naflu mikvah, and it falls into the mikvah, lo paslu. It's not going to disqualify the mikvah because Rashi says it's missing the kortav. But if it would happen in the beginning, 3 lugin complete, and it would fall in a kortav of yayin, and now it would look like wine, it would disqualify. And so what this is consistent with the position of Rabbi Chia. Let's say you have 3 lugin of water that's missing a quart of and fell into it in a quart of milk, umar ein kamar mayim, enough for a mikvah, and then it falls into the mikvah. Well, pasul, under those circumstances, it is not going to disqualify because there's not the 3 lugin of water. And so therefore it's not going to disqualify. But if it would have the 3 lugin of water, it would in fact disqualify the mikvah. This is the position of Tanna Kama, and this is consistent with the position of Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Yochanan Menuri, Omer Hakol Chachar Amar. Rabbi Yochanan Menuri says everything goes after the appearance, and by wine, even though from the outset it had 3 complete lugin, since it looks like one, it doesn't disqualify it. And Rav holds like him. Whereas by milk, even though he said, even though it's missing a quart of, the milk would make it complete 3 lugin, and then it would disqualify. So Rav is like the Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and the Tanna Kama is like Rabbi Chia. So the Gemara says, so then the Gemara says as follows: how was it obvious to Rava that the Tanna Kama says that we go after the shear and not after the appearance, and therefore he says that Rav holds like Rabbi Yochanan Nuri and not Tanna Kama. Hami by Rav Papa, didn't Rav Papa have this exact question? Because Rav Papa asked the following question. By Rav Papa, Tani Chaser Korta Beresha. So the Rav Papa asked, Rav Tani Chaser Korta Beresha. Did Rav first ask the question about the 3 lugin of water that's missing a quart of? And according to this approach, we say that Rav says that only in this case the Tanna Kama says that it doesn't disqualify. Of a shlosha lugin, but 3 complete lugin, Tanna Kama pasli. Did Rav talk about the chaser kortav in the beginning, and then he asked about the case where it's 3 lugin and disqualify? And Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, "So everything follows the majority." The Rav Omer, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and so therefore Rav is consistent with the position of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and not Tanna Kama. Maybe Rav did not have these words chaser kortav at the beginning of the brayso. And so therefore, even Tanna Kama admits to this idea of 3 lugin of water is like wine does not disqualify. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri keep polygas safe with the polygon. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is only arguing on the conclusion with respect to the position of 3 lugin of drawn water missing a quart of, where there comes milk into it. That according to Tanna Kama, that does not disqualify the mikvah because he says it has to have 3 lugin of water and the appearance of water. And so therefore he says, since it's not 3 lugin of water, it's only with the milk, therefore it's not going to disqualify. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, everything follows the appearance. Rav Amar K'divrei Kol. Rav says like all the Tanaim, that everybody admits that we follow after the appearance, and we don't disqualify the mikvah when there's 3 lugin of water. And so therefore, maybe Rav was not sure about the price. How is it obvious to Rava that we say chaser kortav at the beginning? So the Gemara says, or Papa Mibale, Rava Pshitoi. Rav Papa wasn't sure, but Rava was obvious to him. Amar Rav Yosef, Lo Shmiel Li Hashmaita. We know that Rav Yosef lost his learning. He forgot his Torah study. And even though Rav Yehuda was a student, I never heard this halacha from him in the name of Rav. If 3 lugin of water have a quart of yayin, don't disqualify it. Aroy Abaya at Amar Slani on. So Abaye says, what do you mean you never heard it? You told it to us. You told it to us, says Abaye. You told it to us. And this is what you said to us. We're on 4a. Jeff Boker Tov, we're on 4a. Coming down like halfway down the page. Abaye says to Rav Yosef, you told it to us in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. The Rav Otani Chaser Kortav Bereisha. The Rav did not say at the beginning of this brayso the words Chaser Kortav, meaning to say, and also the Tanna Kama does not disqualify a mikvah, and it's 3 lugin of water, she'uvim, if it looks like wine. Rabbi Yochanan, a sefer polygon. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is only arguing with the sefer with respect to 3 lugim that are missing a kortav that have kolav. V'Rav the Amar K'divrei Kol. And so you told us this position that Rav holds like all the Tanaim, and not like Rava, who says that Rav follows Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri alone. So now the Gemara says, since we're talking about dinim that Rav Yehuda said the name of Rav with respect to the laws of mikvah, I'm Rav Yehuda Marav Chavis Malay Amayim. We have another halacha that he teaches. Let's say you have a barrel filled with water. Shenafol Yamagadol. This barrel filled with drawn water. Drawn water is prohibited for a mikvah. Mayim she'uvim. And falls into the Yamagadol. Hatov al sham. So somebody who goes to the mikvah there will also owe tefillah. Somebody who goes to the mikvah in that exact spot where the water was drawn, that's not kosher. Even though the Yam HaGadol is a kosher mikvah, but since you're going to the exact spot where the water is, you have not done a sufficient immersion. Rashi says, Shema kol mayim shayu b'chavis omdim yachad. Maybe all the water that's standing there in the barrel is standing together. V'shema bazeh rosho v'rubo b'mayim. Maybe this person is putting his head and the majority of his body into the water that's drawn. This is one that's going to disqualify the truma. So basically, that's listed at the end of Maseches Zavim. So basically, what's going on here is that tefillah is not working because we're concerned that the shlosha lugan of this water. We're concerned that it's possible that all this drawn water that built from the barrel is standing in one place. And so therefore we have to be concerned that this person, his immersion has not worked because maybe he's not going into the sea, but he's going through the drawn water. And so therefore the tefillah is not sufficient. There's a huge question about this because don't we have a principle called hashaka that as long as the waters touch, it's called like kissing. And so therefore it's going to be sufficient. And so therefore it should be kosher. So therefore, why is the immersion no good? Even if you went into Mayim Shuvim, it's like a kosher mikvah. And so therefore Rashi says, Shema kol mayim shayu b'chaves omnim yachad. Shema bazeh rosha v'ruba b'mayim shuvim. Rashi therefore is saying maybe all the water in the barrel is standing together. Maybe his head and his body are in Mayim Shuvim. Meaning to say, and this is one of the disqualifications of the truma. So Rashi is basically saying there's no concern. It's not concerned that he immersed in Mayim She'uvim and he's not tar, but the concern is that since he immersed in the mikvah and became tar, then he became tamei again from the divrei sofer, meaning to say it's rabbinic, because the Chum made a decree about a person who's tar who puts the majority of his body into water She'uvim that he's puzzle. So that's why Rashi is saying this approach, because otherwise we have a very great difficulty. And then the Gemara says, this concern is only specifically by the Nar Gadol, but by a river that's moving, because the Nar Gadol is the sea, the Mediterranean. It's very calm. But if you go into a river that's moving, then we're not going to be concerned because it's all moving. So then the Gemara says, Tanya Namiyachi. Indeed, we have a brayza that supports the same idea. If you have a barrel filled with wine that falls into the Yam HaGadol, the Mediterranean Sea, Tov Sham will also a tefillah. If you're immersed there, it's no good. Because we have to be concerned about that maybe all of it's standing in one place. And so in this case, maybe we're concerned, maybe you didn't go into the Yam HaGadol, maybe you went into the wine. Also, if Truma fell there, Tame, the kikar is going to remain Tame because we have to concern maybe the yain is standing in its place and the water doesn't get mixed in. The person who immerses is going to disqualify the wine, make it Tame, and then the wine will disqualify the kikar of Truma. And so therefore it's no good. So the Gemara says, "My v'chein." Why does it say v'chein? This is the exact same law. Why does it say this law with wine? So the Gemara says, "No, mal the tema hasam uki gavre achaske, achi uki trumi achaske kamashwan." Maybe you could say that the person, we put the person on his chazaka, and so therefore, since we're not concerned, we just say he's tummy out of a doubt, and so too also expect the kikar of truma. We shouldn't make the truma tamei because we keep the chazaka. So we're saying we don't do that. We don't keep the chazaka. We assume that it's tamei. We say it actually becomes tamei. Okay, now we're up to the next Mishnah. So this Mishnah is relates to witnesses that want to make a person uh, that they say that person has to pay either money or lashes. We say in addition to the punishment that they tried to do, they have another punishment of lashes because they violated the prohibition of what's done of or not. Meaning, the Gemara raised this: do we give them lashes for violating the prohibition of testifying falsely? So, therefore, what's the case of the Mishnah? So let's say we testify about a person that he owes his friend 200 dudes. And these people, these Reuben and Shimon come and testify that Levi owes 200 dudes, but Reuben and Shimon are testifying falsely. And they're discovered to be Adam Zoman. So we give them lashes for testifying falsely, and they have to pay. Shalo Hashem Hamevin Lidei Tashlumin, because the prohibition that brings them to Shalo Hashem Mevin Lidei Makkos Mevin Lidei Tashlumin, because the prohibition that brings them to get lashes is not what brings them to make the payment. That's the position of Rabbi Meir. That the lashes come about because of the prohibition of Lasana Variachayit Shafar, and the payment comes about because of Kasher Zaman. So we do the payment because that's what they tried to do, and give them lashes because they did a prohibition of the Torah. I'm say whoever pays does not get lashes. That's the position of the Chachamim because it says Kidei Risha so. Because you do to him like his wickedness, meaning say Mishum Risha Achat Atamachayvo, Yatamachayv Mishum Shtei Risha. Because you only give him one punishment and not two. So the next case is we testify about this person Makkos are by him. He's liable for lashes. Zomin, and then they discover that he is indeed Zomin. Welcome Shmonim. Then Rabbi Meir would say we give him 80 lashes. Why? Mishum Mosana Variachayit Shakar. Mishum Hasisa Mol Kasher Zamam. 40 because of Hasisa Mol Kasher Zamam. And another 40 because do not testifying falsehood. Chum say gets 40 lashes because kasher is a mum, but not because of Osana. So then the Gemara says, Bisham or Rabbanan, it makes sense why the Rabbanan say you only give him one set of lashes. Kedei Rishaso Ksiv. It says in the Torah you give him the prohibition according to his wickedness. Mishum Risha Achas Atamachayov Yatamachayov Mishum Shtei Rishayos. You punish him for one wickedness, but not two. Ella Rabbi Meir, my timer. What's the reason why Rabbi Meir says that he gets two sets of lashes? Why doesn't he darish in Kedei Risha so? Amar Ula Gamar Mimoti Shemra. So Ula says he learns it out from the law of a Moti Shemra. What's the law of a Moti Shemra? The law of a Moti Shemra is a person who marries a woman, and on the wedding night he claims that he's found that she's Pesach Pasuch Matzah. He says, I found her to be she had been adulterous, and so then he turned out to be a liar, so he has to pay the father. Ma moti shemra loki umishalim, just like the case of the moti shemra. In addition to him getting lashes, he also pays the father of the girl. It says he has to pay her mea kesef, 100 pieces of silver. So to every case where you get lashes, you also pay. So the Gemara says, Mara Motzi Shemer Sheken Kanas. No, the case of Motzi Shemer is totally different. How can we learn out from Motzi Shemer to every other place in the Torah? Motzi Shemer is a penalty, and any penalty is a chiddush. And so therefore you can't learn from this about other cases. So how can you say that Rameir is learning it out from Kanas, from Motzi Shemer, which is a Kanas to Adam Zoman? So Rabbi Akiva Damar Adam Zoman Kanas. This is something that came up yesterday's daf. That Rameir is on the position that Adam Zoman is not remuneration; it's punitive, and so therefore that's why Rabbi Akiva says that if you're moded and if you go and admit to another court, you're going to be exempt. So that's the position here of Rabbi Meir, that it's the Kanas, and so therefore he learns it out from Motzi Shemer. So somewhere in this teaching of Ua, who says we learn out from Shemra on the following law. Because it says with respect to Oh, this is beautiful. This is Erev Pesach. It says, "Lo susir mimenu aboker, no sir mimenu baboker." Vayish Yisrael. It says by the current Pesach, you cannot leave it over to the morning, and if you leave it over to the morning, it will be burnt in the fire. That the Torah says they're not going to leave the current Pesach over to the morning, and if a person did leave it over, he has to burn it over. Torah gives the positive commandment of burning it after the negative commandment of not leaving it over. Because this is what's called a a lav that can be fixed by the assay, lav anitak assay, and so therefore we're not going to burn it. So this is a law, a prohibition that can be fixed by a positive commandment. You don't get lashes for it. That's the position of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Kiva Omar, woman at Shemutah. He says, no, that's not the reason. Rabbi Kiva says, what's the reason why you don't get lashes for it? Because you didn't do an action. You just positively stayed overnight. And so therefore, Kolav Shem Maisa ain't woken up. He said, that's the reason why you don't get lashes. Not because the lav should be class say, but it's because it's a prohibition without an action. But Rabbi Yehuda says it's the reason why you don't get lashes is because there's a positive commandment that can fix the negative commandment. But for the fact that Rabbi Kiva says the reasoning is you don't get lashes because the lav Shem Maisa, that's proof that Rabbi Yehuda is of the position and lav Shem Maisa woken love. And even though there's no action associated with it, you get lashes. Minole, what's the source of this idea that even though there's no action, that you're going to get lashes for the prohibition? What's the source for Rabbi Yehuda? So Amar Gamar Motzi Shemer. So I said Rabbi Yehuda learned it out from the case of the Motzi Shemer. That Ma Motzi Shemer Lav Shemo Maisa. You haven't done an action. You just spoke, and we've already said it around 3 times in this tractate that speaking is not an action. So too, and Lokanov, and you get lashes. So to every prohibition, there's no action, you get lashes on it. But the Gemara says, no. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda says that even though there's no prohibition associated, there's no action, you get lashes. But in this case, you don't because it's a lav anita class that can be fixed by the positive commandment. The Gemara says, but malamotzi shema sheken local masham. So the Gemara says, how can you learn out from motzi shema? That's a unique law. You get lashes and you pay. And so therefore it's possible, since it's so strict, that's why you get lashes even though there's no action. Elamar Reish Lakish, where is Rabbi Yehuda's source? Rabbi Yehuda's source is from Adam Zomamin. Ma Adam Zomamin Lav Shemomais. Just like these false witnesses, it's prohibition without an action. And we say the local law, Af Kol Av Shemomais. So therefore, learns every prohibition without an action, you get lashes. Gemara says, no, but Mal Adam Zomamin Shekain ain't Shechan Asra. Adam Zomamin has a unique law. They're not warned before they do their action because we don't know that they're lying. So therefore, we don't warn them. We don't know that they're doing their action. So since it has this stringency, maybe that's the reason why they get lashes, even though there is no action. And where it says, well, Motzi Shemer Yochayach. So learn it back from Motzi Shemer. So what's the common denominator of Motzi Shemer and Edu Zomrim? And Lav Shemer Ma'asev both Motzi Shemer and Adam Zomin have this commonality that there's no action associated with them, and still they get lashes. So Afkol Maisa woken off. So therefore, we learn out to every case that there's no action, it's a prohibition, we still get lashes. But the Gemara said, but there's another common denominator. That both of them are punitive. The Motzi Shemer is clearly punitive, and according to Rabbi Akiva, the Adam Zoman is also punitive. So Gemara says, "Hello, Kasha." Rabbi Yehuda will say, no, Rabbi Yehuda says it's not punitive. He doesn't accept the position of Rabbi Akiva. And Gemara says, but there's another common denominator that should say that they're unique law. There's another common denominator, and each one of them has a specific stringency that Adam Zomim don't require Asra. They don't require a warning. And Motzi Shemra, you both get both lashes and a payment. So they both have a stringency. So maybe that's the reason, since they both have this tzad chamor, maybe that's the reason why you get lashes, even though there's no prohibition. Where it says, Rabbi Yehuda, tzad chamor lo parach. Rabbi Yehuda says that's not a question. This idea that they both have a stringency. because they're two different stringencies. So the Gemara says, Rabbanan, who say that the witnesses do not get lashes because of Losana, I Losana for my Darshray. So what's the point? What do they do with it? Meaning to say, why don't they agree with the mayor that it's coming to tell them that they get lashes? Right. So why do we need this prohibition to say this context of do not bear false testimony? It says, no, it's to tell us that you're not allowed to be a false witness. That's what's telling us. That's just prohibited. Rabbi Meir is already no. So where does Rabbi Meir know this idea that Abe Zilman are not allowed to be false witnesses? Mar says, "I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah nafkaway min anisharim yishmeu v'yirav will yosifu od." He learns it out from the passage of Adam Zilman where it says that everybody who hears this, when we see what's done to them, they'll hear this and they'll be afraid and they won't do this anymore. And so therefore that's the source. For Rabbanan, the Rabbanan say no, only by way, that is to teach us la'achraza, that the Bezdin has to make a proclamation about them, that they're being killed, so that everybody learns from it. Rabbi Meir says, achraza yishmeu v'yiro nafka. And so he learns it out from He learns out specifically only from the words Yishmu v'yiro, but not from V'lo Yosifu Ola. So that's how he learns it out. Okay, so this is today's daf, and God willing, I just want to say the schedule, Baruch Hashem, we'll do the next daf at noon today. God willing, hopefully people can join. And this is a daf that refers